duty
He said
is a concept that is core to many episodes of Star Trek. In fact, the word duty
He said duty.
appears many times in Star Trek titles. Only once. You know, it was the one where the cadets do the starburst thing, one of them dies, Wesley pisses off Picard by lying and shit. Oh, and Tom Paris was in or something. But the episode of Starfleet Academy we're talking about today explores the challenges and pitfalls that come with a couple of cadets trying to fill societal expectations, promises, and their duty. Can you be serious for one moment, you stupid motherfucker?
He said duty. He said duty. He said duty. He said duty. He said duty.
Kill me now. So join us as we talk about episode 7 of Starfleet Academy, which has nothing to do with math, the episode entitled Cosine. This is Treknicity. Welcome to Treknicity, a Star Trek podcast, where we explore the Star Trek multiverse, one mission at a time. I'm your host, Patrick Murray, and joining me are not two of the reasons that the Sand Demons blew up twice. Lars Di Scenza, James Mottershead. Kat is taking some time off and will be rejoining us in a couple weeks, so.
Hello. Yeah, sorry, Kat. We miss you. We miss you, my dear.
Sad face.
Right. Yes, all sad faces. In this episode, we're going to talk about the 7th episode of Starfleet Academy, Cosine.
And now join us as we warp into spoiler territory. You have been warned. Now, for the short-ass plot summary, there's James.
So here goes. The students are on break for All Worlds Day. With the trauma of the Miyazaki mission still looming large, Caleb and Genesis pal around on the Athena doing hijinks. Caleb is still dealing with his feelings over Tarima, who's recuperating on Beta Z. We also discover secrets about Genesis that could lead to her expulsion. Meanwhile, Darham gets kidnapped to go home and get married and to rule Kionia. Jaden unintentionally joins in.
That almost sounds exciting. Let's start with All Worlds Day and talk about that. As the episode begins, the students are lining up to leave for All Worlds Day. Sam is heading off to Denver to get her software patch, as she's still suffering from glitches that don't appear to be wholly gone. Jaden is going off to do beach stuff with Kyle, who is still grieving hard over the death of Bavi in the prior episode. Genesis finds out she's going to be nominated for the pre-command track, also known as the captain's track, before she leaves to go hang with her admiral father, apparently. Tarima is on Beta Z still recovering. Caleb, of course, whines until he gets his weight and gets to stay at the academy. We don't get to really see what Darham's going to do because he gets kidnapped. And then Jaden follows to save him.
Sorry, Kyle.
So as the Kets are going their separate ways for this episode, let's talk about how they all appear to be handling this trauma that they're still recovering from.
I guess I'll start. So I guess it's the obvious statement. It's mentioned, but I guess the opening of this episode kind of took me a little bit by surprise, if I'm honest, because I would have thought there would have been a lot more emphasis on the trauma, but it was a very kind of not even subplot, it was subplot because it was barely mentioned. It was referenced, but it didn't really kind of touch upon it the way I thought this episode was going to go straight after episode 6. I mean, I'm not angry with it. It was just a little bit of a surprise.
Well, I mean, yeah, I do understand. And it did feel kind of a little off kilter because it just seems like I glossed over the entire thing. And a lot of people don't understand that when you have such a traumatic event, you have to have time to decompress and process. And it feels like they kind of just glossed over that. Now we've got something like we've got the the next plot going, which is Darham being kidnapped and taken off to its homeworld.
Right. Mind you, we still have references to the whole thing. I mean, obviously, Sam is still having glitches from that, and you could kind of tell that the 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 whole thing is lingering in the air. Obviously, especially Kyle, from what we hear from Jaden, because they're going to go off and probably have some talk about it and things like that. All these little things indicate there's still the trauma lying there. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I think I think you're right, Lars, in terms of what you said. Sometimes it's not always good to immediately get into the whole therapy phase of trauma.
Hmm.
Um, and I think having watched this episode a few times over now, I guess it makes more sense the fact that they're having time to just take a break and reflect on that before getting right into the thick of it. Just took me a little bit off guard in terms of what I expected coming out of episode 6 and into episode 7. That's all.
For me, I felt like the trauma was being revisited more by Nala than by the cadets themselves.
Yeah.
And it's like they have this link. It's like we have to link it together. We have to make sure that everybody who's watching it understands that something really, really bad did happen, but we're not really going to process it for the cadets. They're just going to kind
Yeah.
of go off and do their own thing.
Yeah, and the hint was very much there of they're not ready to talk about this.
Hmm.
They're just going away and having a break, and obviously Caleb's resisting any idea of going anywhere other than looking for his mother. And Sam, I think there's a strong hint that things are not quite right with her with the whole kind of glitchy aspect of it. And obviously she got shot right through in episode 6.
yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see where that element of it goes, I guess. The other aspect of Genesis being nominated to go on the command track was good, although she looked a little bit hesitant, which we can come on to later on in the episode because obviously we know what happens on this. But did anybody actually spot the look? It took me a couple of watches to actually spot the look between her and RK when she starts mentioning the transcript.
I recall we're glowing. You'll sail through.
You kind of see a very split second go. It was almost like a flinch.
It was an oh shit moment, that realization.
Yeah. But
And
she was holding her shit together, right? Because she really wanted that to happen.
Yeah. And we find out more about this later, and we'll get to that. But yeah, obviously, trauma's still there. They're acknowledging it. They had mentioned the counselors in the last episode, and it's kind of the take a break, have some time, then we'll continue back, and we'll see how the trauma plays out in future episodes. But on the plus side, at least it's being addressed, unlike, say, Deanna Troy every third episode or Miles O'Brien every other episode, where, oh, we had trauma. Next episode, we're back to normal. We're forgetting everything. At least we're getting the acknowledgement here. And I think ultimately we will see progression on this.
Yeah.
I wanted to have one last point that I wanted to share on the whole addressing trauma. This is something that Starfleet Academy has done really, really well. And we'll see later on just how well they address it, because they do it in a way that no other series really has. They've come close with some of the situations, maybe even the episode of DS9 where O'Brien has to spend decades as a prisoner in a very short span of time. That kind of got onto that point, but this, where they're going, gets much, much more deep in the weeds, and it is absolute Star Trek the way they handle human emotions.
And last point, it was an improvement even over the one episode with Picard after he dealt with the Borg trauma.
Oh yeah,
Literally one episode of TNG.
so I think it was the 4th season episode, Family. It was the second episode of season 4, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty much all we could say about that. So let's continue on. Go ahead, James.
Right. So let's move on to Darham and Jaden. Jaden finds himself on a moon of Kionia, and after a misunderstanding with the rock and something about a good way to die, we discover this was a matrimonial kidnapping. And to cover, Darham explains that Jaden is his cosign, or best man, as we'd phrase it. They discuss his upcoming marriage, his duty, and how it will mean giving up Starfleet Academy. Jaden points out that this is him trying to please others. And after Jaden gives his cosign speech, which talks about Darham, as he is at the academy, Darham's new wife realizes his place is at the academy and has him abdicate and tells him to go back. So, how has his sense of duty and self sacrifice forced Darham into choices he didn't want? And how did his bond with Jaden help him see the path forward?
That's actually a really good question because for a moment there, the word that came into mind for this episode was Star Trek hijinks. It was like, I mean, it was almost like the Scooby Doo gang had decided to have an episode of Star Trek. But ultimately, it does get down to the meat of what these characters are facing. Darham has this complex where he has to impress his parents and do the right thing and make them proud of him. So he does all of these things without actually giving any resistance or thought about what he really wants. We see that finally, through help from his mate, that he can actually go on and do the things. But again, he had to be pushed to do it. He was not going to come to this point by himself. He had to be pushed to make the right choice. But that kind of underscores who the character is and why he's on the track where he is at the academy. He does have, I think, greatness instilled in him, and he has the potential to be a great commander or a great Starfleet officer in general, but I think it's going to take people pushing him for a while.
Yeah, I can completely agree with that. He's obviously been kind of focused on this is what other people expect of me. This is what other people want me to do. I'm supposed to go to Starfleet and impress my parents, and then I come back and I get married and I roll Kionia because that'll impress my parents. And I love this girl, but Starfleet's given me really cool things and a chance to be myself. But I have this duty, so I have to come back, and everything comes back to that. And we have seen Darham over the season start off as just the asshole character, but slowly develop to understand that he needs to be part of the team. And especially with Jaden, shown he's shown that he's kind of gotten close, even though they still don't like each other. They
Hmm.
are also friends.
No, I agree.
Odd-
I think the way this was portrayed, and I felt very nostalgic about my own past and some of the choices that I've had to make, either a selfish choice or a selfless choice between you can be faced with conflicting duties in life, and in this instance, obviously it was his duty to Starfleet or his duty to his family. um and they are sometimes some of the hardest decisions that you can make in life. But I think I love the way this was portrayed. I love the way that Jaden also called out, in essence, just called out the BS that was going on of, what are you doing here? This is not a decision you are making. You are making because you want to make everybody happy, because you're a people pleaser. Um, and you want recognition from your family by doing this. What are you getting out of it? There were so many questions being posed during the course of this episode, and I thought it was really quite beautiful in the way that his bride to be, what was her name again? I can't remember her name.
Kyra.
Kyra. The way that she recognized that, acknowledged it, and ultimately made the decision that was right for him, not necessarily right for her, but right for him in the end of it.
Well, she made the choice for him in the end, and
Yeah,
that is on brand with the character. And I
yeah,
think that with her having to do that, it shows us that he still has a ways to go. But of course, he has to do what he has to do. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. And I think that that's what makes him so great. this is the point where you start to see he understands where he wants to be. He has an idea of where he belongs, and he knows that it's not here at home.
But he still
Yeah.
tries to do it anyway. That's the problem.
But see, here's the thing about good storytelling: the only thing that matters really for anybody who's watching, reading, listening to, ingesting is that the story is completely relatable to them. And
Yeah,
that's
totally.
exactly how it is. This is very much the ideal that as a person in a civilized society, that you have to grow up, you have to get married, you have to have children, and that is basically, and you procreate, you effectively just keep propagating the species through whatever societal norm is is there at the time.
Yeah, and I think there was a constant running undercurrent with this episode when whilst we're on the subject of love and marriage, because you could cut the sexual tension between Derham and Jaden with a knife in this episode. Like, I mean, and it was never really it was only suggested with um body language. It was never discussed. They never discussed it. But the way they looked at each other, the close proximity they were at times in all of their dialogue, um, everything was built up that something was going to go down here, right? We all got that vibe, right? It
Yep.
wasn't just me.
I think Kyle's going to be pissed.
Just whilst we're on the topic of sexual tension and male bonding, can we also take a moment to appreciate and admire and ogle the great Caleb um, in in this episode? So
Oh,
obviously
we'll
we
get back
have
into a minute.
we have a few moments when he's telling himself on the Athena, and honestly, you could play him like a xylophone with the way that that man is sculpted. He's just he's just beautiful, right? He's
Holy
genuinely
shit.
just beautiful. And I'm getting my own back here, dear listeners and watchers, because
Uh,
these guys are always talking about the side boob, and I'm now talking about the male anatomy in all its glory
The
and
front
how
ab,
beautiful.
we'll call it the frab, the front
hold on. Abs.
I am definitely a K-Lab fan.
Let's go to those abs, Lars.
So on the Athena, Caleb is catching some rays when Genesis shows up. They play the game, toxic or not toxic. Unsurprisingly, Genesis wins. They have to chase a warp slug around while not getting caught by Reno. Then, after a lay on the floor session discussing Caleb and Terima, Genesis convinces Caleb to help her hack into the bridge so she can sit in the command chair. But after starting the ship up, Caleb figures out the real reason is that Genesis went up there to get a key. But then Reno shows up and hauls him before Ake for punishment. In the end, we discover that Genesis is not nearly as confident as we thought. And it's her sense of duty driving her to overachieve, but not necessarily for herself. As a result, she loses her spot on the pre command track. So, how do these expectations drive her to fake it until she makes it? Patrick.
Yeah, the biggest thing with Genesis is that she has expectations of living up to what her father is, and that seems to be the drive. And while she is fully capable of doing it, and to the point that she was going to be on the pre command track, she has this idea this is what she has to do. And this has been reinforced throughout the entire series is that my dad's the admiral. I have to do this. I got to be the best. Everything is her trying to be the best of the best because it's expected of her. But then she's debating whether she actually wants to be doing this and pushing herself this far,
Hmm.
even though she's demonstrated she's cut out for this.
And we've seen it in various episodes up to this point, right? She's got a very regimented she's very driven, and it's very regimented, and it's really well portrayed by her, I think, in terms of her upbringing. What was she was referred to as a Starfleet brat, I think in episode 1 or episode 2, um, in terms of her upbringing, because obviously her father is an admiral. Um, so she's kind of coming with this pre-built sense of duty and determination and drive, and a very competitive nature. So she wants to succeed and she wants to do really well. This was a bit of a vulnerable side to her that we haven't actually seen a lot of up until this episode, I thought. Um, and we see the crack in the armor, which is the fact that she's obviously forged some of the transcripts that has got her to where she wants to be, and she's trying and she's kind of digging a hole in the process of doing all this, right? And she can see it, and Caleb can see it, but obviously he tries to lend a hand and helps her attempt to do that. Emphasis on the word attempt, because obviously they get caught out. Let's just take a moment to put some appreciation in for the warp slug. The warp slug was
Yeah.
an incredible moment. Yeah,
was
especially
fun.
when
That was
the first
fun.
time it warped into the glass wall. It was just incredible. And then even when it warped onto the kind of the ceiling bit, and then you see the little bit of slug juice or
Yeah, it's
slug
like
saliva,
drooling.
whatever it was, dripping down whilst Reno's talking to Thock. It was so well done, that moment. If I was there on a starship on my own, I'd probably be doing all the same things that they were doing. Let's be honest, we'd all be tinkering and trying to get into places that we haven't been. And it was quite relatable for me as well, because I still remember like late nights in a school, for whatever reason, of doing that, and kind of exploring those areas that are kind of forbidden. It's a bit of a thrill.
I can't help but agree because to paraphrase Thought, if I was me, I would shenan once and I would certainly shenan again.
Love that line. Love that line.
We
The
need
good thing
more
about
thought.
this is there is a real like comparison between Genesis and Darham in this episode. We both see them faced with very similar situations,
Mhm.
handling it in very similar ways, but with ultimately different outcomes.
Yeah, and I admire Caleb's attempt at taking the responsibility to save Genesis. I really did admire that about his character in this episode. But equally, I also admired Genesis's stepping up to go, no, Caleb, this is wrong. I need to take the rap and the responsibility for this. And I think that's half the reason why RK then saved her, if I'm honest.
Mm.
The way that whole scene in terms of Reno catching them and then an RK coming back into it
Yeah.
and dressing them down. Um, Obviously she got took off the command track, but she was saved in the academy. And I think in anyone in that situation, I mean, RK was rooting for her and was the one who was putting her up to the command track. So, and you know what? There'll probably be a few people out there who go, "Oh yeah, yet again, she's coming up with more BS reasons to save her precious cadets." But why wouldn't you in those situations? These are very young, driven, intelligent individuals. Why would you just suddenly expel them out for stupid mistakes?
Yeah, they
You're looking at the person as a whole, right? Not those isolated incidents. I mean, I guess it's the nature of RK's character in this.
Yeah.
She's tough where it counts, but she's also lenient where she needs to, where she feels she needs to be.
Yeah, because her goal is to get the kids through the academy,
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
flush them out.
yeah.
See, the thing is that this is one of the latest batches of Starfleet cadets that has run through the system in a system that hasn't been there in an institution that hasn't been there for many many years. So it is really important for Ake to protect this flock of cadets and to help them succeed, because if you don't succeed, the academy falls apart, and the academy is integral for the reintegration of Starfleet into the galaxy. The other point we have to consider here is that Ake will protect her cadets, but not always with a free pass. the
Yes, thank
crimes
you.
do have to have some form of punishment. Patrick?
After receiving their punishments, Caleb and Genesis are stuck mopping out the turbo lift. So they continue their discussion. Genesis pushes Caleb to reach out to Tarima, preferably unedited, because they had something special before the Miyazaki, and he needs to just try. Caleb eventually does, though we don't actually see how this resolves. We just see that everyone is returning to the academy, including Sam, a very sunburned Kyle, and of course Jaden and Darham, who is still an asshole because it's Darham, but in a good way. Um, Caleb joins all of them as they watch the apparent apocalypse level meteor shower. We don't know what's happened with Tareem at this point, though. So ultimately, what does this bode for Caleb and Tareema's relationship, as well as the need for communication in relationships? James?
So I think this episode, I don't want to say handled it poorly, but it didn't give a. I know obviously we were told that Tarima was back at Beta Z recovering, right?
Yep.
Um, but then there was a bit. I guess I felt a bit confused about what was going on there. You know, was she just simply not responding to him? But obviously, we find out then very later on in the episode. I think he just wasn't. He was feeling nervous about communicating with her. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. I'm just saying I didn't quite get the the plot of what was going on between them in the early stages of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know he tried to communicate or was attempting to communicate with her, but I just couldn't understand the reluctance of it all.
I can tell you absolutely what was going on, and that was he was trying to communicate with her his feelings, his thoughts, his everything with her because ultimately, regardless of it being her that made the choice to do what she did aboard the Miyazaki,
Hmm.
he feels guilty for it. So he doesn't know how to address the situation. It's
Yeah,
literally trying to uh, talk about the elephant in the room. Okay. He knows what she did. She knows what she did. But ultimately, how do you discuss it? It's like the movie Watchmen for anybody who's seen it. The very end of the movie, we see that Rorschach is unwilling to keep the secret of Ozymandias because Ozymandias is the one who basically orchestrated this entire thing to manipulate the Soviet Union and the US to effectively not have war with each other by creating this catastrophic event all over the globe. So in the end, Dr. Manhattan actually has to turn him into red paste. And they all have to live with that. Going forward, they all have to live with that. And Night Owl is like he loses his shit right there because he doesn't particularly like Rorschach, but the fact that the dude was turned into goo right there just snapped something in him. Like, how the hell can you do that? Well, how do you talk about that? Like it's not like the very end of Avengers where they have the after credit scene where they're all getting shawarma together. This was a situation like, how do you talk about that? How do you communicate your feelings about something so catastrophic? And I mean, again, imagine you have this mild mannered partner who has intimated that there is something stronger or more deeper
yeah,
in there, and then you're like, yeah, we know it's there, but we've never seen it, so we don't know what to do. And then bam, she drops the nuke on the sorry,
yeah.
she
I know,
on the
and I get that. Obviously, we made references to Terima Psyduck's powers in the episode 6 review, right? But I guess what I'm saying, I didn't quite understand the need of the awkwardness because don't forget that before, obviously, she went Super Psyduck and had a massive headache and all the stuff happened thereafter. They had a meaningful conversation about drawing a line under how he felt about her powers to um, be able to mind speak and reach into his mind and all that stuff. They kind of addressed that elephant in the room. This created obviously a what a WTF moment, but I didn't feel it warranted a need for them to have an awkward connection at that point. Now, granted, obviously they were completely separate from the immediate traumatic incident that happened. From my perspective, it just didn't quite make sense. That's all. That's all I'm saying there. It felt like he in that situation would do nothing but send communications. Now, I would have understood it, I guess, if the point plot was she wasn't responding back. That
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
If I could distill my thoughts down into one sentence,
Hmm.
there's knowing with your head and knowing with your heart.
Yeah,
He knew what the situation could be at any given time, but you never truly understand it until you've experienced it. And once you have that knowledge stuck in your heart. And I think that's kind of where it is. You just
yeah,
don't know how to handle it. I mean, we all as human beings have the capability of committing absolute terrible atrocities, but you don't actually understand it until you experience it.
yeah. I think from a like an individual personal perspective, and having dealt with unfortunately some traumatic incidents in my past, I guess it's unrelatable, this aspect of it, because I've done kind of the complete opposite in other situations. Maybe it's just me and my personal experiences and the way I've dealt with things in the past that it's just somehow kind of distorted this of how could you not talk about this? Maybe that's the reason.
What are your thoughts, Patrick?
Okay. Well, a couple things. First of all, obviously he's trying to do it, but he keeps hitting the delete button. If you remember, though, the last time they talked before the Miyazaki situation is when she kind of got into his head and the sharing situation. That freaked him out. The next time they talk, I'm talking to you because we got to do the situation to get you out so you don't be dead. And then, oh yeah, I'm going to do this terrible thing which you're going to have to forget, which I don't think you'll forgive me for because I'm going to explode Fury's heads. And then she's gone. I mean, his communication's mostly just been between him and Occam, trying to find out what's going on with her physically to see if she's back up. Then he's trying to send messages. You don't know what words to use or how to say what it is, and you're kind of waiting to break the ice. But Genesis finally tells him you just have to put something in there, send it out, and see what happens. And we don't get to see what happens.
No, and I think it's actually a really good point. It actually kind of it stitches it together in a way that makes sense.
Okay, so I think that's pretty much all we can get from that. So let's go through anything that we have not covered yet, and maybe revisit some things where we have.
Um. So yeah. So I think we've already covered a few aspects of the magic of warp slugs. That was a
Yep.
marvelous point in this episode. I'd love to get me a hands on a warp slug.
I thought it was
James,
I really thought it was really funny.
it was
Oh
funny.
yeah,
It genuinely was funny. Um, Talaxian Furfly. What was the reference in this episode? It's attacking a lab tech.
At the very end of the episode, I think there was a call that somebody needed to go and take care of that because it was attacking a lab tech.
yeah,
I love those Talaxian Furfly call outs. They are funny, and they're only subliminal, right? They're only subliminal. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. I think I've missed a couple of them, but I've caught them in the rewatches, and I
Yeah.
love. He's doing a splendid job with the voiceovers.
plus
Um,
the fun of the fact that I didn't know I didn't get the reference till we did appear on the Trexperts quiz, and I had to watch season 5. It's like, oh, there's the Talaxian Furfly. So
yeah,
yeah, that was cool.
I Reno and Thok. Um, I think the scenes between Reno talking to Thok
Yeah,
probably could have worked a little bit better had she been there. I don't know the reason why that was. Because obviously it was just
yeah,
she was just on comms, wasn't she? We don't actually
yeah.
physically see her in this episode.
Yeah, we just hear her losing her shit the whole time. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
But that
Um,
underscores the nature of relationships in the 32nd century,
mhm.
when you can be literally anywhere and still talk like you're right next to each other. And I think that was a good representation of them being able to carry on a very normal conversation between two people who are in a absolute natural relationship, having that kind of discussion. I really felt like it was uh,
I
you didn't have to be like, she did not have to be there. In fact, actually, it underscores that you can have these kinds of relationships and that they are completely normal to do this, because that's exactly what we would do if we were there. I mean, you imagine how we communicate right now in the 21st century by being able to pick up a telephone or pick
mhm.
up an instant message device of some description, and we're talking to everybody all over the world at an instantaneous level. That's exactly what it is here. It's a natural progression of it. And I really feel that it was done better that way than having Reno right there in person.
And yeah, and out in terms of that relationship, it's so relatable from mine and my husband's relationship, right? Of me being the feisty but whiny bitch in the relationship, and
I can
Andy,
see that.
my husband, being the good, calm comic relief in that relationship. I love the dynamic between the two of them. I think it's really beautiful, in the way that they're portraying that. Was that meteor swarm a little over the top?
I have a card for that.
Take it back a little bit,
And down.
down a bit. Right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a bit OTT in terms of the meteor swarm?
Well, yeah, usually that looks like the sky. If you remember way back the end of Independence Day when the alien ship that exploded is raining down, that's the level of shit that was hitting the atmosphere. I mean, we know what an actual meteor showers looks like. There's just like a few, you see a flash here and there, and it's really cool.
Yeah.
But this was, holy shit, did space dock explode and just start pouring down on the
It's
Starfleet?
You
raining
know what
down.
it reminded me of? That
Oh
episode
God.
in I'm gonna say something unforgivable now on a Star Trek podcast, but I'm actually gonna refer to a Star Wars story episode of Andor. You remember the meteor shower in Andor, the ridiculous meteor shower? It kind of reminded me a little bit of that.
But you're talking about Star Wars, so of course it's ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We can strike
It's
it from the
perfectly fine
record.
there.
It's all right. This will never get past editing, but so I'm free enough in saying it. It won't get past editing now, will it?
No, never.
Sorry, guys. Sorry.
Hey, we can reference anything. I think we were discussing genitalia, and I was pulling from B5. So
um,
where they have the dicks that can. Yeah,
there's a couple of other points that we've not yet raised either. So I think the other plot point that we haven't actually discussed is all the costumes in Kionia. We've not discussed those. I mean, both boys looked absolutely fabulous, right? Albeit extremely flamboyant, I would say. I mean, it's a Kionian wedding, and obviously that appears to be what is traditional dress on that. But it was an incredible amount of gay undertones in that dress, if I must say. Not that I'm complaining by any means, but obviously, they've made a lot of different references over the last few episodes, and I think it's been subtly dealt with. Those that are calling this series out as being too woke and being too diverse, um, I think are
they're
wrong
assholes.
in that way, because I think a lot of it is just subtle undertones with some of the characters. Not all of them are diverse. Um,
Like,
but I do think a shout out needs to go out to the costume designers, Jaden's outfit and Darham's, even though obviously we get the scene where it's literally splitting at the seams.
Mm,
Um,
true.
it
True.
was quite funny that side of it.
But do you know that's actually a pretty good callback to the fact that he doesn't feel comfortable in this situation? It's not a
Mhm.
good fit for him. And I think that is as much a on the nose reference to the fact that he doesn't feel comfortable in
Yeah,
this situation, but he's still putting that jacket on.
yeah. So unless there's any of the plot points I think we haven't yet covered,
No.
is there any other ones that you can think of?
I know.
Well,
Oh,
Jaden and Kyle watch,
Oh.
although we kind of want to get Darham into the mix there. But yeah,
yeah, there's definitely a running undercurrent and an undertone of something is there's obviously tension between Darem and Jaden, um, and it'll be interesting to see how this goes in terms of that dynamic, because obviously we already understand that Darem is polyamorous, not that we understand how Kyle and Jaden would respond to something like that.
make him
But
wait.
I guess we'll see how that progresses, eh?
This episode did a really good job of that as well. What they did show is some sexual tension between Jaden and Darham, and as well as between Caleb and Genesis. And you don't, and the thing is, they leave it to the point where you don't know what's going to happen. And I want to say that I get really tired of hearing the naysayers talk about how woke, how diverse this whole thing is, and how this series is making everything about the gay agenda, quote unquote. It's not. It's showing both sides of the coin. In episode 6, it literally starts off by Caleb and Tarima getting it on. Okay. We have not seen
The important thing is we found side boob there.
Kyle getting it on. We've only seen them on the very surface level of their relationship. And to be honest, I just want the naysayers to, quite frankly, shut the about it.
Yeah.
I'm tired of hearing about how this is not right and they shouldn't be doing this and they're pushing this agenda. There's no agenda other than they want us as viewers to see these people as real, normal people living real, normal lives.
And that's the beauty of this, because obviously we're hundreds and hundreds of years in the future. Where there will be an incredible amount of diversity and respect and tolerance in the world and in the universe. And I think the way they deal with this on air, because nothing's there to become a shock factor for any of the characters. They talk about polyamory. They've got gay characters, and it's just normal, and it's beautiful, and it's there, and it doesn't need to be discussed, because why does it need to be discussed?
Yeah, the thing with Jaden and Kyle is they just are existing. There's no real hard storyline about them. Although getting those two and Darham together in a threesome, that'd make that a storyline. I'm down for that. Let's just go for it. So
Just let them be them.
yeah, that's the point. That relationship and Thok and Reno are really the relationship exists. We see a moment of it and it moves on because it's not a major part. It's not a significant part of the story. It's just moments
Exactly. They're glimpses.
rather than dwelling on it. And that's the plot point. To wrap this up, my thoughts on this episode: this was a solid episode. We had two parallel storylines dealing with duty and expectations.
You said duty.
Yes, I said duty. And the whole point was to really enjoy, to really see these characters try to figure all this stuff out and hopefully grow and become better characters. And the side stories, which deal with the trauma of the Miyazaki incident, are still lingering underneath. And I think we're going to really enjoy what happens when we get to that. But this episode, definitely a solid entry. James?
No, it was a good episode. I like the dynamic between Caleb and Genesis. I love the dynamic between Jaden and Darem. I think it showed us a lot more about Darem's character, but also Jaden's. He's fierce where he needs to be, and also is incredibly supportive of his friends. He's dedicated to his friends, even his friends that he doesn't like very much, but obviously clearly does. I did really enjoy this episode. It was fun. It was serious in the moments that it needed to be serious in, and really funny.
I'm going to give this episode a solid 8 out of 10. The story was really good. The relationship dynamics were really good. I feel that they kind of put it against uh, a kind of milk toast story about the the whole holiday situation and the meteor shower and all that stuff, but you kind of got to put a base somewhere. So that's why I get, I'm not being too rough on it. I'm really happy with how they are developing the characters. And as I will say again, the one thing that has been really good with every single Star Trek series is that they hook you with good character stories right away. I think the only exception to that rule was TNG, and they had a very rough start. But because it was the first Star Trek series in a very long time, we were willing to give it another chance. And then once we start getting into the second season and onward, of course, it starts to really find its footing. The good thing is, I was always critical of Discovery because I felt like they rammed characters down our throats. Like they expected you to love them because they were the characters in the story, not because they did a really good job of developing them. This one, completely opposite. It's in the same environment. It's the same kind of, I guess, biosphere, if you like, of characters, but they have done a fantastic job of making you like these characters because they are relatable.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
So that's our review of the 7th episode of Starfleet Academy. Did we get it right? Did we miss anything? Do you agree or disagree? Let us know.
Thank you for joining us here on Treknicity, where we wonder as we wander through the Star Trek multiverse. I'm your host, Patrick.
I'm James.
And I'm Lars. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Treknicity.com, as well as visiting all of our socials listed here, or find us on your favorite podcast service, such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. If you have ideas for future episode subjects, please feel free to drop a comment on this video or DM us on any of our social media accounts. And as always, rock out with your Spock out. We'll see you next time.